So my computer, I said I was going to show it off, and I didn't think it was going to be like this. Right now, it's completely not working, won't even boot. I've had it all apart. I've troubleshot everything. Let me just go over with you what I have and what I've done. So I had a Intel i7 6700K on a Gigabyte Gaming 7 Z170X motherboard. I never really liked this motherboard very much. I got it because it had this creative audio device. You can see here, creative sound card. But it was just never good. It had terrible drivers. It never got a driver update since 2015, I think. And it just would make terrible noises. So I had to get a sound card right here, an Asus Owner sound card, just to be able to use audio on this machine. I had a RTX 2080 in here that I got from a friend. I had 32 gigs of G.Skill DDR4 3200 RAM, and I've got a EVGA 750 gold power supply. I've got a couple Noctua fans you can see, the nice brown fans in the bottom, the back, and the top. I have the Corsair H100i GTX cooler, 240mm cooler for the CPU. Here we see I have a couple Western Digital black hard drives, just for some data storage, and on the back of the case I have a Samsung 850 EVO, I believe, SSD. So the CPU, the computer really went from bad to worse. So at first it was just doing weird things like kind of going to sleep a lot on its own even while I was using it, or shutting down right in the middle of I was using it, or when I would leave it idle and come back, it wouldn't come back on. I thought maybe the power supply was going bad, so I took the power supply out of a different computer, half swapped it in here, at least on the motherboard for the 28 pin and the 4-pin CPU sockets, but that didn't help. It was still having the issue. So the main thing you do when troubleshooting is start removing pieces. So as you can see here, I've removed the RAM, I removed the sound card, I've removed the USB 3 ports, I've removed all the RAM but one stick. I have previously removed the video card, the GPU. I removed everything that I had USB plugged into it, and still it wasn't booting. And in fact, it was even getting worse. So it went from Windows not being stable to not even getting to Windows, to while in the BIOS it would just shut down, to not even reaching the BIOS. All this happened in a matter of 2 to 3 days. So it got really bad really quick. I did everything I could do to diagnose it without having a spare CPU or spare motherboard for this generation. So it's definitely either the CPU or the motherboard that's having the issue, because I replaced everything else. I tried one RAM stick at a time in each and every slot to see if it was either any of the RAM sticks were still good, but none of that really worked. So the errors I was getting were generally, there's an LED up here showing you kind of error codes. The errors I was getting were generally about memory initialization, according to people online, and they always just said, reset your memory, you can get to work. But after trying 4 different sticks in 4 different slots, one at a time, that never worked. So I don't believe that's the issue for me in my case. I looked around on Craigslist to see what parts I could find. I did find some spare motherboards from this generation, but the cheapest one I could really haggle down was $80. And spending $80 for a used, I believe it was even used for mining, he said, 5-year-old motherboard, approaching 6-year-old motherboard, isn't really ideal. It's not a good use of money, I think. For not much more than that, I can really start building a new system using most of my parts, looking at like a new Ryzen system. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is head to my local Micro Center. Fortunately, I'm lucky enough to have a Micro Center around where you can still buy PC parts in person. And I'm going to get a new motherboard, new processor, and set that up here. So I can reuse the RAM, I can reuse the video card, reuse the power supply, reuse all the fans, the hard drives, the case, and really just those 2 parts I need to fix. Hopefully my Windows install still works, and so let's see how this process goes. So here I am going into my local Micro Center. If you guys have a Micro Center where you are, you're really lucky. Be sure to use that resource. There's not very many places around where you can still buy computer hardware in person, more than just really, really basic stuff. So this is just the inside of the store a little bit. You can see all the motherboards they have. I picked out this B550 ROG Strix board. and then you can see a couple of the processors that are over here in the case. And I picked out a Ryzen 5 3600. So let's get these home and put it together. So here's the new parts I picked out. I went with AMD, so I've got an AMD Ryzen 5 3600. The reason I'm going with this is just it's such a great value for the money right now. The 6-core performance that you get out of this is going to be a big improvement over what I had with my old 4-core Skylake processor. And the discounts that they already have on this, it's just too good. I mean, they have the 3600X and the XT that just came out, but the difference in price for just a couple hundred megahertz really doesn't justify it. And then also the higher ends like the 3700X and 3800X, again, you get 2 more cores and you get in some cases a little bit higher clock speeds, but the price difference just makes this processor just unbeatable. And then this motherboard, this is Asus ROG Strix B550F gaming with Wi-Fi. The reason I went with this, one, I wanted B550 because I want future upgradability. I want to be sure that I can go to Ryzen 4000 when it comes out. So Ryzen 3000 is great, but Ryzen 4000 is supposed to be even better. We'll see it maybe late this year or into next year. And I want to be able to take my mid-tier processor I got here and have the opportunity to upgrade to a top-end processor when that new gen comes out. Otherwise, there aren't a lot of choices available in B550 right now. Mostly they're more expensive choices. The cheaper boards are extremely cheap and not well made, and that's why I didn't really want to go with one of those. I wanted to have something that's going to last for a long time. B550 over X570 though, the reason for that is all the X570 boards have that little tiny chipset fan that's really likely to fail, those tiny little size custom fans. I don't want to have to deal with that. And then otherwise, the difference in the two isn't going to be something I'm going to notice. I'm not going to have multiple GPUs. I'm not going to have multiple high-end NVMe SSDs. So I won't be noticing any detriment with this. Also, with the exception of, again, the few cheapest micro ATX boards, X570 boards are even more expensive than this one. So this was $210, but at Micro Center, buying both together, you get a $20 discount, so this rings up as $190. As for the Wi-Fi, I'm not going to be using the Wi-Fi, but they didn't have a board without Wi-Fi. It's supposed to be $20 cheaper, I think. I would have got that if they had it, but it wasn't there. So let's get these unboxed and see how great they are and put the computer back together. So first, let's open up the processor. There's not really much to see here, but there's a cooler in the box. Really just a cooler in the box. So here's the chip. Ryzen 5 3600. See the pins on the bottom. Very fragile. This comes with the Stealth cooler, which is the smallest in the line of these in-the-box coolers. Now, it's not very big, but it is enough to cool this chip. The chip doesn't run so hot that this is insufficient, and there's already some thermal paste supplied here. I don't know that I will be using the cooler for this. I don't think I will, maybe just for a little bit. I said I had that H100i GTX cooler, but I don't have the mounting bracket for AM4 because AM4 didn't exist when I bought it. So I need to get that online, which I'm working on. And then here's the motherboard. So what do they have in here? Right away on the side, this is your Wi-Fi antenna. A little antenna here, I guess it has a little stand. This is just so you have a strong Wi-Fi signal. So here's the full board. Comes in obviously the anti-static packaging. Let's open it up and take a better look. So we see the 4 RAM slots, the socket, 2 big PCI Express slots, with the closest one being Gen 4, and 3 single PCI Express slots, 2 M.2s with heatsink on top, 20 pin there, USB 3 here, the old style USB 3, some fan headers over here, 8+4 on power delivery, some more fan headers. This also has an explicit AIO header, audio headers, RGB headers, USB headers, front panel, and 6 SATA ports here on the side. This also has Asus's Supreme FX audio. I really was dissatisfied with the Creative audio, so I hope that this version doesn't have any issues to make me regret not just going for something basic like the Realtek audio that isn't great but never has deadly problems. Let me move this out of the way. See what else comes in the box. You get 2 SATA cables with straight connector and the right angle connector. You get this fan or RGB cable, I'm not sure what it is exactly. You get some zip ties in a plastic bag, great use of plastic. Get a couple motherboard standoffs, it looks like. That's only 2. That's not enough. And some sticky pads for M.2 SSDs. You also get some sticker set because gamer. So for Republic of Gamers, for those who dare. And a user guide with some driver CD that no one ever uses. No one really has CD drives anymore. And they're all available to download online. Well, there's one more thing here I didn't see. So this is just a card, a thank you card. Thank you for your purchase of this ROG Strix product. You made the choice of champions. Champions indeed. Let's put it together. So for this video, I'm not going to show the full process. It's going to be too much content. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take out the GPU, take out the radiator, take out the full motherboard, then I can get the new one in. So I'll check back. And here's what it looks like with the radiator, the graphics card removed, and I've got all the screws taken out of the motherboard, so I just need to pull it out now. And now it's all empty. So separately, we'll assemble the motherboard, CPU, and RAM. So to install the CPU, if you see down here in the corner, there's a very tiny little gold triangle. And that matches here in the bottom corner another triangle. So this is the orientation of the CPU into the socket. So first you lift up the arm, take your CPU out gently. So on AMD CPUs, the legs, the arms are here on the CPU itself. On Intel CPUs, the arms are usually on the motherboard coming up and the CPU is flat. So really gently place this here, line it up, get it to all go down in. Give it a little wiggle, make sure it's down in, and then lock the arm. So now this is in here very securely. To install the cooler, this motherboard by default comes with these arms here already attached, but this cooler directly attached to the motherboard. So first we need to remove this. So these are just a little piece of plastic used for more beefier cooler mounting styles. This cooler we take here. We have our thermal paste pre-applied. Since I'm not going to be using this for very long, I'm going to just go ahead and keep that default thermal paste. And this is going to go in here. So notice the holes are shorter on this side than they are on this side. So we can go either in this orientation or this orientation. Either one doesn't really matter. But we want to plug the fan in. The fan goes over here. So I think if I put it this way, then the fan will be aligned well. And then this just screws in, so gently line it up. Then you attach the fan here. So there's a CHA fan or AIO pump right here. So I'm going to attach this to the fan. So if you touch it right there, it'll let it dynamically control the speed based on what your processor needs at the time, how hot it is currently. Now for the RAM install. So when you're installing RAM, you either want to have generally 2 sticks or all 4 sticks. If you only have 1 stick, you're really missing out on a lot of performance. So when you have 2 sticks, you want to do the one closest to the CPU and the third one, right? So you always skip one. So these two go together as a pair, and these two go together as a pair. So take your first stick, you have the tooth that lines up here, and these newer ones only lock on one side. So get it. Oh wow, that actually won't fit. Let's see how high that is. Maybe we won't be able to use 4 RAM sticks with this cooler. Okay, so there I installed those two. Now, if we see that there's no way another RAM stick's gonna fit under that cooler, and if we turn it around, maybe it'll work. So I guess let's try to turn it around. So I've got the cooler turned around actually, and it looks like there's just enough clearance to get in a RAM stick with a heatsink on it. That one and this one. Okay, all 4 sticks in. So now that we've got the CPU, the memory, and the heatsink installed, time to just drop it in the case and reinstall the screws. So I'll do that. And okay, got the standoffs done, got the motherboard installed. One note here, this header was actually not, it was a case fan, I was upside down reading it. The CPU fan is up here, as well as CPU optional, but this one is CPU AIO case. I've connected the fan header, the USB headers down here, the USB 3.0, the main power. I need an additional CPU power up here, so I'm going to lift the case up and I'm going to do some more cable management, and we're almost done. This is the back, not perfectly cable managed, it's slightly better than it was. Definitely could be worse. And here's the front. Not looking too bad. Oh, I forgot to put back in the GPU. It's looking really empty without the GPU. It looks pretty clean. Now it's bad luck to put the cover on before you go test it, so I'm gonna go test it now. Here's the moment of truth. RGB's going already, just by getting power. Press the button. Let's see. I don't know, it's not looking good. I don't see anything on the monitor yet. Got some lights going on there, so I guess I got something to investigate. Check again later. Oh, I didn't do anything at all. It just made it to the BIOS just a few seconds after I turned off the camera. After this, I had lots of trial and error that I didn't take video of because I didn't know what changes were really going to work. So the colored lights on this board, those are for debugging and tell you what's broken. It has 4 lights and it goes through the boot procedure from DRAM, CPU, VGA, and boot. It's really helpful if you read the manual and you can find this stuff out. What I realized kept happening is that my motherboard was going into safe mode so it could boot, which lets it bypass a lot of checks and settings. Booting was really unstable though because the default timings for memory with only setting the speed were too tight, and I didn't see that the AMD DCOP option until later, which is like the XMP profile for Intel. This sets the memory speeds directly and all the timings. Also, I found out that one of my RAM sticks was not working properly by running MIMTest, and with only 2 sticks in, they need to be in slots 2 and 4 as shown in the manual, not steps 1 and 3 like I was doing. My Windows install was still a legacy install, so when I set UEFI, it prevented me from actually reaching Windows. I later changed this, and then once I got into Windows and read about this, I ran MBR to GPT to enable the more modern UEFI boot option. But even after getting into Windows, it's still unstable. It would blue screen often. I use a Microsoft tool called Auto Runs to disable a bunch of processes related to old hardware that I don't have installed anymore. This helped a lot, but it's still not 100% stable, so I've decided to get a new drive and reinstall Windows, which I'm going to talk about in another video. So this video was really different than sim racing, but PC hardware is something I'm also passionate about. It's just too expensive to be doing all the time, but I hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you like and subscribe. Come back next time and see more, and remember to stay terrible out there.